Stay tuned to the end of this video for a word to our patrons. Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk FGO Wanted, the show where we let you know if you want to roll that 5-star. Now put the kettle on, because today we're going to be talking about the upcoming SSR Limited Berserker, Sen no Rikyu, as this is a return to form, not doing that summer stuff anymore. We got a whole year to wait on that. We're going to be standing on ceremony today to talk about a servant's real-life history, their fate lore, their mechanics, and more. That said, this character's in a little bit of a unique space for an event SSR, in that they actually have not only, the secret extra bond level, but quite a lot of their profile is spoilered, and you can't access their final ascensions until event clearance. So we're going to talk about that a little bit in the lore section and also avoid some spoilers. But before that, history. So Sen no Rikyu has many different names and title. We're just going to keep it Rikyu today, long U. But Rikyu is a highly influential figure in Japanese culture, specifically in establishing and elevating the tea ceremony to an art form. That's about it, honestly. I could end the video right now. I won't. But that is the main cultural art form they are known for. So, many of the tools and techniques used in the modern style of tea ceremony are of his design, and he's even been called the Tea Saint before, which will make a lovely title for this YouTube video. Rikyu was born sometime in 1522, because as usual for this time period in Japan, we're not keeping great birth records, and died in 1591 at age 70. We do know the family name Sen, and we don't know much more than that about Rikyu's younger years. We got a few different things. His family were merchants, usually said to be in the warehouse business, and there are some sources which say he started to study the tea ceremony at about the age of 17. Not only did he study tea, but also Buddhism, and incorporated Zen elements and aesthetics into his work, particularly the wabi-sabi style. Too grossly oversimplified, because this is a whole, artistic and philosophical style. It's like me trying to compress, Baroque or Gothic into a single paragraph. But the basic version of wabi-sabi is about finding beauty in the imperfect, the impermanent, and the incomplete. Or to quote another source, nothing lasts, nothing is finished, nothing is perfect. It's got its roots in Zen Buddhism. The physical translation of this philosophy means that you'd basically see it as a simple, a rustic, often rough around the edges, but a very authentic style. Wabi-sabi style teacups, for instance, and other teaware are kind of, rough, inexact ceramics. They're a little rugged looking, Some people might be a little snobby about, them not being, all perfect in proportion, but like I said, there's a certain authenticity to it as well. Unfortunately, after, the late teenage period, we have even less detail about the middle period of Sen no Rikyu's life. We're pretty sure, based on records, that he married a woman named Hoshin Myoju around age 21, and he had a second wife later. We know he has several descendants because of things we're going to get into later. And there is some historical works from this time that indicate he was performing the tea ceremony and selling tea and ceramics, but he's not really notable or famous until 1569. Nice. And that's because in 1569, Sen no Rikyu became the tea master of the one and only Oda Nobunaga. In addition to serving tea, Rikyu seems to have received at least one letter for providing Nobunaga with material support, possibly in the form of hired assassins or mercenaries, to deal with rebels in the Echizen province. And I think specifically the fate profile does talk about, helping Nobunaga be supplied with, guns and other works through merchants. There's a lot of mercantile stuff going on around. But also, served tea. Now, obviously, the Oda Nobunaga period comes to an end at Honnoji, but after that, Sen no Rikyu became tea master for one Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and performed for him many tea ceremonies, including one before the emperor, where a monk in attendance gave him the name Rikyu, which is the one that has kind of stuck, even though it's obviously very late in life. Rikyu became one of Hideyoshi's inner circle, and even counted samurai and daimyo as his students and teachings. I didn't see anything that indicated this was how they were referred to at the time, but, later disciples of his literal schools of tea ceremony performance. We'll talk about that a little later, but yeah, the guy founded multiple dojos, effectively, of the tea ceremony. But in recounts by those later disciples, they came up with the term of, 7 luminaries, 7 dignitaries, where there were allegedly 7, really high-ranked samurai lords who study the tea ceremony under Rikyu, for instance. So this is when Rikyu began constructing tea houses, usually in the small remote style called a grass hermitage. I neglected to write down the original Japanese term in my notes, so we're just going to die, I guess. But furthering his style and implements, working on a lot of those things. His teaching spread, and like I mentioned, he had several nigh legendary and possibly fictitious disciples during this time. You know, they talk about, like, great monks serving him, who may, again, not have been real. In general, Rikyu's style became to be known as wabi-cha, and the general vibe was much more in line with that wabi-sabi style. To kind of explain what that means, Rikyu would transport the utensils to the room when it was time to serve instead of displaying them ahead of time, and used, rustic practical tools and teaware. Rather than using famous artistic objects, that was the vogue of the tea ceremony before that. You would, like, have your very shiny implements and cups and kettles and stuff displayed ahead of time. This got combined with the simple, rustic outdoor tea room design, the inclusion of gardens attached to it, promotes a rustic, natural setting for this kind of thing. If you've seen, like, in a movie or an anime, a Japanese-style, like, tea room or tea garden where they do the ceremony, that's all this guy. And in fact, I didn't, like, list them all out, but there are several types of, like, cups, pots, other tools, which are named after Rikyu or shares Rikyu's name. So he was really jamming along on that whole tea ceremony thing, but unfortunately, in 1591, Rikyu seems to have incurred Hideyoshi's anger. First, he was forced to go into seclusion, and then he was eventually ordered to commit seppuku. The exact reason is unknown. No one is exactly sure, because Hideyoshi never said it was because of this. Or if he did, he didn't do it in earshot of anybody who was willing to write it down. But I found a few historical sources which list a bunch of theories. We don't know, but there's some interesting stuff here. A lot of ways you could take this, but the general theme seems to be that despite his simplistic style, Rikyu was sometimes arrogant and always idiosyncratic, and sometimes even intimidating. There were high-ranking daimyo who were, like, intimidated to be in his presence. There were some concerns that, like, theories that were floated that there were concerns that Rikyu was more influential than Hideyoshi, or was, becoming more influential than him. There was some possible concerns over, like, renovations to temples, which may have displeased him. There's a lot of stuff there. The general vibe is that Rikyu did something either that Hideyoshi told him not to do, or was asked by Hideyoshi to do something that he just said, nah, man. And you don't do that to one of the great unifiers of Japan. So for a while, his heirs were temporarily placed under house arrest, and the Sen family was, disbanded, but they were restored later by the intervention of Tokugawa Ieyasu and Maeda Toshi. So, talking about some of them big boy inclusions. And I believe Maeda's son was listed among Rikyu's legendary disciples. That said, because there was this complication, this is what I talked about how there became 3 major successor schools for Rikyu's teachings, which are collectively known as the 3 Sen houses. As far as I can tell from, like, a quick, Google lookup, these schools, these dojos, are still extant to this day. They are still teaching classical tea ceremony techniques. And Rikyu also has a famous death poem. It was rendered in the Book of Tea, which was a later accounting of his life, as, "Welcome to thee, O sword of eternity, through Buddha and through Dharma alike, thou hast cleft thy way." And also, yes, I do want to bring that up as we kind of round out this section. Yeah, Senno Rikyu was just a guy. He was, the son of a merchant family. His father probably died when he was 19, based on some of the records. So, became head of the household early. But he was ordered to commit seppuku, like a samurai. So that kind of lets you know about how far up there he got. And obviously very influential, mentioned in a lot of places. There are, plays, films, books based around him. All sorts of things. And I believe his remains are interred at a temple as well. Now for that lore stuff. You're going to ask me the obvious one, which is, hey, Senno Rikyu, well known in Japanese history and folklore as an old man. Skinny little lady? Yeah, so, as I mentioned before, Rikyu is a case where you need to clear the new Yamataikoku event for most of her profile and her ascension arts to be unlocked, so we're definitely getting into spoiler territory. That said, I can say with the information you're going to be presented with, like on a surface level without getting to the whole event, you can see ghostly hands, which I have done a very funny thing within the thumbnail. I hope it's funny anyway. But you can see ghostly hands even in the first ascension, so I can say that this is our other thing besides they're just a girl because. We have occasion of possession and multiple characters, hence the spooky ghost girl vibes. It's kind of similar to what we do with Hokusai and Bakken, but also different. I can tell you this character the other characters involved in the possession are related to Toyotomi Hideyoshi and kind of fit into the mythos there, but we don't really need to get into it further. Hopefully you're going to play the event, especially if you're going to unlock, the servant. Maybe when we talk about it on the show, I'll get Lucky to explain. He actually guessed a lot of these things ahead of time, so, he'd be super hyped for that. And if you know, you know. Other than some spooky ghost stuff, the primary reason for classifying Rikyu as a berserker, besides, again, just cuz, seems to be that kind of single-minded focus on the tea ceremony we talked about. Rikyu is all about the tea, especially when engraved on history as the tea saint. So I think that plays together well with this, historical mystery of why Hideyoshi ordered his seppuku. There's a lot of singular focus, a lot of possible defiance. There's a lot of, gags about this, even in, some of the skills and passive selections we're going to talk about in the next section. It's not an unearned classification, but it is also a kind of funny. Sorry, I had to resist doing a 1%er joke there. We'll leave off and get into mechanics. But now that we're in the mechanics, let's talk about them. Senna Berserker. Like many berserkers, she leans higher in that attack than HP, though not as high as some of our more famous berserkers. Rikyu is unique among berserkers for being quick. Arts Buster. The only one with this spread at this time, and also having high NP gain and hit counts on quick to make up for that. We're talking about 5 hit quick cards and a very good NP gain. Rikyu's NP is an AoE quick. It's got 6 hits, which is, on the curve. It also gives all enemies who are hit with it NP seal for 1 turn and gives them 1k curse damage for 5 turns. The overcharge effect is bonus damage versus human. A pretty normal farming setup. It can also be used to set up future stuff with, using curse-affected enemies. Who I do believe most units like that lean either quick or arts and have some quick cards, so you can make that work. Like, Doman's got some stuff here. First skill is a team-wide 10 to 20% quick, and an NP gain buff for 3 turns. And that's for the whole team once again, and it also generates 5 to 15 stars. Now that you really need that with 5-hit quick cards, but sometimes you need to start with crits. Second skill is a targeted buff. It gives the targeted ally 20 to 30%. Don't know why I said 10 there. I guess 20 also starts with a T. 20 to 30% battery, 1 hit, 3 turns invul, and +2 overcharge, 1 time 3 turns. Very solid targetable buff. Third skill is for the self. It gives a 30 to 50% crit damage up for 3 turns, and a further 30 to 50% crit damage up on quick cards. That is cumulative, so it is a 100%. Also, when attacking with quick cards for 3 turns, it gives a 10% defense down, which that also sticks for 3 turns. This defense down activates first. Pretty simple, straightforward kit, but it does stuff. Rikyu has a few special passives as well. A unique Madness Enhancement, which not only gives Buster up, but also a 5% passive crit up. A unique Territory Creation buff, which not only gives Arts up, but also gives 20% mental debuff resist all the other time. And a flat 10% debuff success. Don't know why we couldn't just put Item Creation in here, but whatever. Also has another interesting passive, which is just all her quick cards have 10% passive NP generation up anyway. So you should have no problems generating NP as Sen no Rikyu. It's in there. So, this is a very interesting niche. On the one hand, quick berserker farming is kind of passé to most people. Like, obviously, even pre-Scotty doing some stuff with Lancelot, you could do some buggy things. And obviously, with double Scotty, that became very much in vogue. But obviously now, if you're berserker farming, Musashi and Ibuki plus Castoria is much more in vogue. That's another thing that's literally cutting edge. Summer Ibuki just came out. There's Koyan reloading strats for all those busters out there. But if you are already set up for that old role, Rikyu should fill that role with several self-steroids, lots of passive NP gain, and a decent trait damage. That said, I don't actually think that's what Rikyu is for. I want to say based on the kit, Rikyu seems to be an off support. Obviously, you can use her to slap waves of ads. But also you have some team-wide and targeted buffs to do some support. You can generate stars, both passively and with quick cards. Like I said, you can buff allies with that pretty decent battery and overcharge effect, plus that invul. And you are set up for the grind with the defense down and the curse strats. Also, NP seal is pretty good for certain stalling strategies. But if you need to, she can fire off also, plus 105% crit damage on her own if you got the stars. So, maybe not the best at either role, but a flexible slot which gives you some room, which is funny considering that one of her passives can be translated as free thinking. For team comp, there's a couple different ways to get out there. Obviously, you've got dual Scotties. Either Scotty, actually, honestly. Summer Scotty also fulfills this niche. You can also run Osakabe Hime as well for your quick support. There's a couple of budget quick supporters. If you want to try and do some, like, funny stuff with the quick and curse specifically, you can also try a Doman comp. Doman obviously, gives chaotic evil allies some extra juice, which Sen no Rikyu is, presumably for ghost girl related reasons. But also, like, his NP, inflicts, curse and evil curse and stuff like that. So there's some of that strats. You can work in a lot of those others with the curse pile up. I don't actually know if Sen is really great for curse meme strats. It's like it's really only on her NP. But it is just one of those things where, like, if you want to boost your damage that way, you can get it out there. If you want to use her in that off support I talked about, I think regular Skahak Lancer is still one of the better single-target quicks, but there are a few other nasty singletons out there. MHXA has a pretty high hit count on a single-target quick NP, and she's a Berserker. There are several, other extra classers out there which are single-target quick. So, like, I think there's some room there. Probably this is not necessarily, like, talking up Sen no Rikyu, because what I think a lot of people who are just casually playing FGO are looking for is either you don't give a shit about meta team comp anyway and you're just rolling because you like characters, or you want a unit who's like the best at something. I don't think, looking at this, having been playing this game for 7 years, that Rikyu is the best at anything, but she is in a pretty unique slot that lets you play around with stuff you really haven't been able to do before. Like I said, there's literally no other Berserker that's QQQ, so there's something here. If you still like to click green cards, give her a check out. Now, if you want CEs, there's a few paths. If you're just dual Scottying, you can probably just apply Black Grail or any of those other CEs that has no other effect than Mondo NP damage. Just make Rikyu hit even harder. Remember, quick NPs have the highest damage multiplier because quick cards inherently do less damage. If not, you may want to go with a 50% or even higher starting CE. Rikyu, if using her targeted buff, can only battery herself 30%, so you may need something like an imaginary element or the other equivalents, CEs, which start you at 60 or 70% NP, or get some append skill time in there. If you are focusing on NP stuff, I would say focus on quick or critical damage first, and then maybe throw in a NP damage multiplier as well, and, just prage. So let's talk about the other stuff really briefly. Speaking of skills, your Ascension mostly uses older mats. Shouldn't be a problem. Do be aware of what you're using with some of those golds, but keep it in mind. But the normal skills, again, one of which is a very good, battery invul overcharge targetable, they require 72 ashes per skill, and all at once. There's no small potatoes here. You have to have 72 per skill all at once for one level. It's brutal. I really hate that that's, like, the math we've been designed at, but because that's the math, we can't just change it, because that would be, grossly unfair and unbalanced to literally all the servants and players that came before. So we're just kind of stuck here because I guess the original guys couldn't do math. Nothing else to really watch out for. Usually, actually, I forgot. I usually mention in my notes, when a servant is going to be involved in story stuff. Rikyu is obviously going to be a big deal in our current Guda Guda, in case you couldn't tell from the hacking, story-locked ascensions and stuff. But also, presumably, because of the way Guda Guda works as a semi-seasonal event, you're going to see her as a bonus servant in all of those future events. And probably not other places, but you never know. Now, like I said, Rikyu is going to be debuting for a new Yamatai Koku Guda Guda event. Neo Yamatai Koku. Shin Yamatai Koku. So obviously that's going to be a banner up. And late next year, we're going to do Guda Guda Super Gyurokaku. That's going to have a blurb of like half a dozen banners. She'll be in there with a lot of other old Guda Guda favorites. There hasn't yet been a Guda Guda this year in JP, but if there is, expect a Rikyu banner hidden in there somewhere as well. And there are limited SSR, so Lucky Bags and Destiny Summons are to be expected as well. Now, also clarify on the subject of the Ascension lock, if you're worried about that, because obviously we don't do reruns for events anymore, barring special circumstances, sometime in October, you should get this requirement lifted. It's similar to other servants who have this lock, like Oberon, where when you get to the point where you've, like, unlocked the Ascension, but not actually, like, changed the art, there's a quest you can do. The quest, to get access to that and the other stuff, you need to clear Yamatai Koku and get the Ascension levels. Sometime in October, there should be an update which removes the event clear requirement. You just have to have the max Ascension and then go through the unlock quest. So they're stalling it out for a little bit, but don't be worried you're going to be permanently locked out of the Servant's lore. It's just something they want to avoid spoilers while the event is hot. Also, hey, by the way, if you want to do the event, you got to clear Lost Belt 4. But that is the script I have got here. I'm not going to quote Sid Highwind again. I did that joke already. And I don't really have any other tea-related jokes to go, but I think we had a healthy, green, even episode. If you want to see more about this event, check out this week's episode of Let's Talk FGO, our weekly FGO podcast. Did a whole quick rundown of the event and its mechanics. Guess what? You have to brew tea. Shocking, I know. So check that out, and make sure you check out the rest of the episodes of the podcast in the future as well, if you want to hear our thoughts and stuff on the event and how we're doing. But that is, I think, everything, so we're going to go ahead and run the outro. So, hey, if you're watching this video, give it a like. Leave your comments in the comment section down below. Report on your wanted luck, etc., etc. You can also join our Discord. Link in the description. We have a rolling thread if you want to post images of your rolls and stuff. Commiserate with people, celebrate, etc. Sorry, I'm doing the outro and I'm watching my sound levels get quieter in real time, and I'm like, how? I'm talking at the same volume. I'll hold the mic in front of my face. Hi, how are you? I upped my gain very slightly. I hope the sound levels are good. If they're not, we'll, I guess, keep upping the gain until morale improves. Anyway, I'm in the middle of the outro. Join Discord. Sub. Like this video. Sub again. Ring the bell for notifications. Join our channel memberships for badges and emotes. And of course, consider supporting us on Patreon. Could get this episode a little early and other stuff at higher levels. And also helps out the podcast and other stuff. It's a brand new month. It's a great time to sub to Patreon and check out the other stuff there. So hopefully we'll see you in that section. And I have a word to our patrons, but we're going to do the musical outro first. And speaking of our patrons, I'd love to give a quick shout out to all our patrons, but especially Adam DeHart, Blackstuff G, Call Me Zed, Carlos, Dragon, JDV9000, Just the Fae, Kaiser, Chris Starlight, Legendary Boss Hunter, Rise of Kenji, Rogue Robin, Shervor, Some Guy Named Bob, and Varian the Crow. If you like what we do, want us to do more, consider supporting us on Patreon. Get access to episodes early and more. Thanks for your support, everybody.